At the start of making a little building like this, I usually start with a diagram, a picture, and take a few measurements on paper to make sure that I know where I'm going and know what it's going to look like. According to my measurements, that little building has 4 walls in it. 2 of them are 8 inches by 4 inches, and the other 2 are like this, 4 inches by 4 in height, plus a bit of a triangle for the gabled ends. So that's what I'm going to start cutting right now. To get an exact cut on these gabled ends, I start with the 4 inch by 4 inch piece, and a pencil mark has been put in here very lightly with the middle point at 2 inches right there. And at this point I put this wonderful little tool on here, and I center it right over the line, right over the middle point, and I make my mark right up here. Now, to get a normal pitch on the roof, I intend to go up from here, 1.5 inches up here, and then draw in my lines. So let's measure that. Just line these 2 points up, like that, 1.5 inches comes there, then draw in the lines. And there you have it. That's the gabled end. And just make another one, just like this, same size, and then we have those 2 gabled end pieces, and I have these other 2 pieces that have been cut 4 inches by 8 inches. They are the walls, the long walls. Now, one of these walls that has the door and the windows, the way I've chosen to put them in is very, very simple. Mark off 1 inch space, 2 inch space, and 1 inch from the end here, and another inch from the end. Those are the windows. For the door, I just take the center point right there, which is 4 inches, 3/4 of an inch on either side of that point, and that's the door. Now, what's the height of these things? Well, I've decided that 1 inch down from the top would be good. So I make a mark at 1 inch, and then a very, very light line, not that it matters too much, it's all going to be painted and covered. Put a very light line across there. And I make my measurements again, the same way I did on the bottom here. I make my measurements up here. 1 inch, another inch, and over here 1 inch from the end, and 1 inch from the end. And this is the halfway mark at 4 inch, 3/4 of an inch this way, 3/4 of an inch this way, and that becomes the door. We'll mark that in right now. Now that's the top of the window right there, but how far does the window go down towards the floor here? Well, I've chosen 1 inch. 1 inch off the floor, just like it's 1 inch from the top. I've chosen 1 inch. So let's make some marks at 1 inch. And put a very light line through here. And then connect the dots right there, there. Just make them a little bit darker up here. And there you have it. Now after these windows and this door is cut out, we will have our wall. Get this piece that I missed in here because the blade can't get in there from that angle. Okay, he's done. And here, that should do it. Oh, yeah. And the other is the same. One more piece like this, and then we're ready to work them so that they all fit together. To join all these walls together, what I do is a hidden joint. That means that I cut a little bit out of this wall, the foam, and leaving the paper itself intact on one side. And then it's all glued together, and it makes a very nice corner. And the way I do this is just mark it off of one of the pieces. Like that. And mark the other side. Just like that. Let's check this again. Yeah, that's it. Okay, let's mark the other one. So, I have to notch out both of these long walls along there, and then that'll make the joint so that all the four walls can fit together after they're cut, just like that. A very careful, steady hand, because you want to cut through the foam, but not touch the paper that's on the outside of the wall here. Very, very gentle. I can feel it cutting through the styrofoam now. Yeah. Okay. It's cut through. Now I'll just put it up on something. Maybe something more, a little bit higher. So I can get the knife blade in there and just miss the paper, but cut through the foam. And there we go. We have to clean this up a little bit with a sanding block, but that's basically it right there. And I have to do 2 walls, 4 cuts. Clean it up and get it ready for gluing. My next step is to paint these corners here that have all been sanded off, because when I glue these corners together, as always, I use 2 kinds of glue. I use droplets of the white carpenter's glue for strength and a few drops of the super glue just to grab instantly. Otherwise, I'd be standing here holding this for 5 minutes, and I don't I don't have the time for that. So I'm just going to do a little bit of painting. It hardly matters what color you use because this is all going to be covered up. That super glue eats styrofoam, but I find that if you have a couple of coats of paint on top of the styrofoam, that doesn't occur. Now, as I'm waiting for these things to dry so I can glue all the four walls together, I think I want to paint these because it's harder to paint them when all the four walls are joined together like this. And I want it painted anyway. I don't want to have this model where you look inside and you see these white styrofoam walls. I want to paint them with something a little darker. Let's see. Maybe some green. I'll paint them all with green. Okay, let's go. To do a good paint job on these walls requires about 3 coats of paint. I just slap it on because it doesn't matter. You need 3 coats. And the only place to be careful with the paint is here. Do you really want the insides of the walls, the windows and the door, do you want it painted green? If you do, then it doesn't matter. I also make it a point of painting these edges here and along here. Because again, these are gluing edges, and some of the glue that's put down is going to be super glue. So these edges have to be protected by paint first before we glue them, like that. While all these panels are taking time to dry, I have time to go and cut the roof panels. And without having this building put together, I know exactly what the dimensions are, because as you can see by this wall is 8 inches in length. So if you want an eave that sticks out 1/2 inch on either side to make the gabled end, or help make the eave around the gabled end, then our panel isn't 8 inches, it's 9 inches. That leaves 1/2 inch on either side. Well, okay, that's the length of the roof panel. How about this? Now this is drawn totally to scale. This is 4 inches by 4 inch, just like the real deal here. And what's the measurement from here to here? Well, that's 2.5 inches. So if we cut a panel that started here and went down here, we'd have our eaves there. From here to here, that's 3 inches. So our roof panels should be 3 by 9, 2 of them. That's what I'm going to cut right now. In cutting the strips that make up the metal cladding on the outside of the building, I've chosen this kind of cardstock here. All this is old envelopes, envelope boxes rather. And I like them because they've got that nice white finish. In cutting these corners for the building here, that's 1/4 inch right there. But to make that corner, what I do is cut a corner that's already made. That makes it easy. So it's just a matter of measuring 1/4 inch, draw some lines, cut it, and I have enough corner here to do 2 corners in the building. Okay, let's do it. Okay. Oh, 3/8. not quarters. Okay. Scratch one corner, gone. David, edit this part right out because I made a mistake. I'll do it again. In cutting the cardstock for the building, especially the corners, it's important to start with a corner that's already pre-formed. And I have access to many like that. I use these old envelope or whatever they were, container boxes, because in here you've got corners pre-made. All I have to do is cut 3/8 of an inch off here and 3/8 of an inch off here, and that would make the corner. I won't use this one in particular because it's damaged. But that's what I do. So this one is a pre-made corner. And we're going to measure 3/8 of an inch on either side of that joint. Like that. One, two, three. And it shouldn't take long to do this. Okay, let's cut him like that. Nice and exact, just like that. There. Now we have pre-made corners for the building, and that should do 2 of them. 2 corners. I just need 1 more like this to do all 4 corners on the building. And then I have to proceed making some strips like this, many of them. 3/8 of an inch in width to make all the steel cladding. That's going to make the outside wall of the building. Well, I'm going to try to glue these walls together now. It's going to be very fast because of that super glue in there, and accurate. Well, it looks a little bit sloppy right now, but all of that is going to be covered up by the corner pieces, and that's the important thing, the end results. I have to love that super glue. Now to glue up the other. Nice and tight. Very nice. There to stay. Okay, now I'll do the other wall. In gluing on the roof panels, I always leave a couple marks just to make sure that it goes on right the first time. That's 1/2 inch from either end. So when I put the roof panel on, the first one, it should go like that, flush with the top here, and 1/2 inch hanging over either side. That's why I have those marks there, to make sure that it's 1/2 inch, because these walls are not exact. There's a bit of a warp in them, as you can see. So as I'm gluing it, I want to be able to bring the warp in like that, to get rid of the warp. So let's do that now. But first, before I glue, I always like to take a look at this edge. If this edge is sticking up too high, I have to shave her down a little bit. Let's take a look how this works. Oh, yeah. Yeah, yeah. That needs to be shaved. You can tell right there at the end. See that gap there? Well, this is what's creating the gap there. This edge is just a little bit running too high. So I get my knife and I shave it off. Not a lot, just... Okay, before I do any more, let's just take a look and see what kind of a difference that has made. Viva la difference. Very good. Very tight. As you can see up in there, well, I don't know if you can, but it's fairly tight up in there. Okay, I'm going to get this ready for gluing. Well, it's dry and waiting for some roof panel. Let's go. Some of this good stuff. I want to take the little bit of the warp out, so I'm going to glue these edges first, and then this will be the last edge that I put pressure on, because I want to glue this and move it over. Okay. Just hold it there for a few seconds. And then it's time to ready it for the roof panel. This roof panel, by the way, is a different dimension than this one. Yeah, I forgot to add that. Because from this point down to the eave there, that is the same as this. But then if you want to butt it up tight against this one, then it's going to have to be 1/4 of an inch more than this one. And so I've cut it to be exactly that. Butt it right up against there, and it is the same down here as it is over on this side. So I've accounted for that in this roof panel. It's actually just a tiny bit wider than this one because of this. Okay, super glue, you did your job. Now, let's see if this is going to fit nice and tight. Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I think so. So we'll do some gluing. Now, let's look at this first. What does that look like down there? Should be all right. A slight warp on the wall here, but as it's held down and glued, if this wall is just pushed in slightly, the warp is gone, if it glues in that position. Okay, let's go. Let's hold it there for a few seconds. I think we're good. I'll hold it here for a few more seconds. Okay, so the roof is on, but now the roofing. In measuring the roofing, you got 3 1/4 inches down here and a little over 9. Now the roof is 9, but if you want just a little bit to stick out on each edge, as I do, then 9 1/4. 9 1/4 by 3 1/4. And that is the size of the roof that's going there. So I'm going to measure and cut those right now. For the capping piece at the very top, of the roof. I measure out 3/4 of an inch. Here's the, let's say that's the middle right there, where that joint is. Right there. I measure out 3/4 of an inch on either side of the joint. That has a natural joint to it, which is what I want. So for this capping piece, right there in the middle, 3/4, 1, 2, 3/4. Okay, just like that. That's the capping piece. Bends nicely in the middle. Now the other pieces, okay, get a nice chunk out of this. 3 1/4 by 9 1/4. What do we got here? Oh, lots of room. 3 1/4. Okay, now this piece here has to be 9 1/4 in length to fit that roof. There, that's one panel for roofing. Now it's kind of interesting how nicely this stuff forms into corrugated steel roofing. If you're careful with it in cutting a piece of paper off one side. Well, let's start here. Let's see how much time this takes. That's it. Just start peeling. Comes off. Piece by piece, it comes off. Sometimes a little bit stubbornly. Glued on. There. With the little bits that are left, I go to work with my pencil here. Just wreck them, what's left here. It doesn't take long to do this. Just a little bit of patience. I gotta get the bigger chunks off. And the rest is just between me and the sanding block. I just start at one end and go to the end. Just keep at it till it's nice and clean. There. See how nicely that's starting to clean up now? In no time at all, this will all be done and cleaned up and ready to glue on the roof. There, it cleaned up real nice. Looks like a piece of tin roofing. Now I just have to do another one just like this, and then we're ready to glue it on the roof. Well, the 3 pieces of roofing that we're going to use on this little house have all been stripped of paper on one side and cleaned up really good with the sponge here, sanding sponge. And I'm ready for gluing this roofing down. So let's go with that. Just like that. That's what it'll look like. Okay, that'll do. Very good. A little bit of pressure for a few seconds. Okay, pretty good. Okay, good. Perfect. It's always my habit to do it dry first. Like with this top piece, I'd like to make sure that I've got it ideally lined up before I put the glue on. I'm always careful that way. This is pretty good. Now let's look at it here. Yep, pretty good. Okay, we'll glue it. That went very, very well with the roof. I'm very happy with it. It's all glued on, very strong. Now the next order of business is to start putting the strips on the corners, and from there everywhere else where they're needed, to make the walls look like they're made out of metal cladding. It won't be this kind of corrugated iron effect. It'll be strips of metal. That's what it'll eventually look like. But for now, I have to cut some pieces for the corners and glue them on. The gluing of these strips along here, that's just to give the building some character. And also, since it is a rusty building made out of metal, the more of these strips, the better, because the edges show rust very, very well. So the more of these edges on the building, the better the look. Well, that's the front that I've done. Now I have to do the sides, the back. I have a little bit of work to do yet. I'm going to cut a few pieces. All of these pieces are 3/8 of an inch in width, but they're time consuming. Just watch how long it takes me to put one on. Oh, that's good. Poke yourself again. Okay. I'm not using any super glue on this. I don't see the need for it. It's not structural. Yeah, there goes most of my glue, probably. Well, let's put it on there. Let's see if that has enough glue. Yeah, it'll probably do. Yeah, there it is. Well, that went on fairly quickly, but I've got to put them up here, I got to put them down here. There's many of them. And along the back, many more. Wow. So, I'll be at this for a while. Well, here's the end results of cutting, measuring, gluing. And that's just the end. It's very time-consuming stuff. It's worth it, I suppose, because when you're done, you have a very beautiful-looking creation. And we haven't even gotten to the painting yet. Well, I have more to do. I have the back. I have the other side to do. But I'd just like to point out that it is quite time-consuming. If it wasn't for the very nice result, I probably would not do it or look for shortcuts because it's so time-consuming. But I do enjoy it. Okay, and now the back. It's the last wall. I measured and cut everything in advance just to speed up the process a little bit. Well, we have a nice little building to paint here. This is the basic building. All these metal cladding strips have been put on. It's looking pretty good. The roof is looking nice, basic roof. And now I'm going to be painting it silver. It's called Silver Morning. For my rusted effect on the roof and walls, I've started with the basic silver. That's what the building was when it was new. So on top of that, I've put a multitude of colors. I've put red, orange, and brown. And in places where I may have put on too much red, too much orange or brown, then I go over and I dry brush with a little bit of silver on top of all those colors. My objective is to try to make this look like an old weathered building. It's a challenge because this building has been built properly. The spacing is all even. It won't be a dilapidated building. It'll just be a building that's been around for a while. I don't know. I don't know how many years it takes for one of these to rust up really badly. Does it take 25 years? Does it take 40 years? I don't know. It takes a while, depending on the humidity and any area of the country where this building would have been built. But for now, I'm still practicing the rust effects. So if you can see it at an angle like this, it looks a lot more realistic, I guess, than any other angle. So I'm going to continue painting these walls now with, well, I'll start with some orange. A little bit red. And some brown. These colors mix up in practice. Yeah. But that's good. It's good if they mix up. That's what I want. I want a multitude of different colors. Yeah, pick one. A little bit more brown. I've looked at rusty buildings. I have an old factory by my home, and there are so many different colors of brown and orange and red. It's just incredible. But the challenge is to duplicate that in this building here. Yeah, multitude. Yeah, up here a little bit. Well, that didn't take long. Now on top of that, after that dries for a couple of minutes, I'll try and dry brush some silver on top of that. And keep on adjusting it until I try and get a better effect. Right now it looks like something you'd see at a carnival. It's very red and colorful, and no, we need to put some more silver on that. So that's what I'll do. I'll dry brush silver all over that and try to make it look a little bit more like the roof, because the roof seems to be coming to what I would really like a really rusty building. I'm trying to make this as realistic looking as possible. I believe I'm getting close to the effect that I want. The old rusted metal cladding. There's silver underneath this paint, but painting on all that rust effect of different colors doesn't look quite realistic enough, so I'm going to stipple it a little bit with silver, trying to blend those colors in. Well, that's not too bad, except a little bit too much silver up here, I think. Hard to say. Hard to say. But it's close to what I want. I might put a little bit of rust on top of that silver. A little bit too much silver. Yeah. It's close to what I want. Well, I finished up with the rusting effects on this metal-clad building. I found that the best way for me to try and achieve this was to paint on the red, the orange, the browns on top of the silver to get all the different colors that rust has. And rust has many colors. I've looked at old rusted buildings and a multitude of colors this rust can take. But I painted those colors on, then on top of the colors I got silver and I just dry brushed it on everywhere. And I wasn't happy with that totally, so then I decided to do a little bit of streaking with silver. And by streaking I don't mean one of those characters who takes their clothes off and runs through a sports stadium just to draw attention to themselves or to some cause, but by streaking sort of like this. See where I've gone like this and like this? Sort of like the streaking that people have in their hair. They'll have, some people when they're starting to turn gray, they'll have one gray streak that goes right down the middle of their hair, and the rest is brown, or whatever color their hair is. But this is what I did, just like this, and I think it's given me the desired effect. It's as close as I can get it to what I've seen in old rusted buildings. I've seen this type of effect where it does rust, but it rusts in sort of like in veins, in vertical veins, going up and down a metal-clad building. And here too. Well, I've done my best to try and make this look rusted. There may be artists out there who could do a much better job, but that's the best I can do with the rusted effect for now. Well, here we are at the end. There's my rusted metal-clad building. And while I was building this, it made me think of something. Quite some time ago, I watched a movie, very, very exciting, interesting movie called Flight of the Phoenix. Maybe some of you have seen that. That's the story of about 8 or 9 men who were in this multi-engined airplane that crashed in the desert. And after it crashed, the men survived the crash. And they quickly realized that they weren't going to survive for too long because they were in the deep desert. And no means of getting out, and they had very little food and water left. But one man came up with a brilliant idea. He said, let's take one of these engines of the airplane, attach a couple wings on the side, put a tail on it, and 2 wheels underneath, and let's fly it out of here. And let's get started right now before we become too weak from hunger or thirst to do this work. So they got started, but after a little while, they started to question this man, and they said, well, we didn't know you were a pilot. And he quickly said, well, hey, I'm not. I've never flown an airplane in my life. Well, how on earth do you know this crazy idea will work? Well, it'll work because I've built model airplanes for years that were radio controlled, and they flew all over the place. And it doesn't matter if you're talking about a jumbo jet or a model airplane, the principles of aerodynamics are the same. They work, always. So they went to work, they constructed their airplane, they got the engine started, and they tied themselves to the wings with ropes, and they flew it out of there to safety. Quite a movie. Well, in putting together this little house, I was thinking of that it doesn't really matter whether the house that you're constructing is 2,000 square foot house or a little model of it. The principles have got to be the same. Is it straight? Is it square? Is it horizontal? Is it vertical? Case in point, you notice that these two windows are the same height as the door. In the real construction world, that is normal, because the framer does that on purpose, just so that the tradesmen who follow after him, like the bricklayer, like the siding man, doesn't have too difficult a time doing his thing. With the bricklayer, he brings his bricks right up to the top of the windows and the door, and then he puts angle irons across those gaps and continues on with masonry work on top. And similarly with the siding man, it makes his job a lot easier too. Okay, another case in point. Many years ago, I went house hunting. I wanted to buy a home, and I looked at many, many houses, but there's one house in particular I will never forget. This man who owned this house was doing some renovation work. He was building an extension, and after a while, I suppose he got discouraged with the extension and the work he was doing, and he gave up. And he was selling the house as is, in the unfinished condition that it was in. And that's when I went in and I looked at it. In normal house construction, if you're building a 2x4 stud wall, it's very important that every stud be 16 inches on center away from the one next to it. And there's a reason for that. Because if you want to insulate your wall with fiberglass batts, they're called friction fit fiberglass batts for a reason, because they're built a little bit wider than that space, so that when you push them in there between those two 2x4s, they're wedged in and they won't come out. Well, that's that. But this is how that gentleman had built his stud walls. And I'm not making this up. This is not an exaggeration. That's how he built them. This man did not own a measuring tape. Now, can you put fiberglass in these walls? Well, yes, you can. But it's not going to be easy. Because here, this space is too wide for a fiberglass bat. This space is too narrow, as these spaces are as well. It's going to take a lot of patience and time and a sharp knife. In fact, in this space here, it's so wide that you may have to nail spikes in the sides of those 2x4 studs to keep the fiberglass bat from tumbling out. So it's very important to follow correct principles when you are constructing anything, even a scale model like this. I found that the rusting effect that I tried to depict on here was difficult to do, because rust is so many different colors. Near my home, there are some abandoned, rusted metal factory buildings. And I've looked at them. Some of the walls are chocolate brown, the whole wall. Old rust. But if I was to paint this whole wall chocolate brown, it wouldn't look like rust, would it? It wouldn't be realistic, even though in the real world that is sometimes the case. What I found was a multitude of colors on top of silver, and then dry brushed with silver, and and then streaked with silver. I suppose that looks realistic because isn't that how rust occurs? Due to rain falling on the wall and running down. It looks realistic to me. And I had a lot of fun constructing it. I had so much fun that I built another one. That's how it looks when it's brand new. If you've enjoyed watching this video of the rusted metal building, then please subscribe to Papa Smurf at MiniWarGaming.com, and I'll see you all in the next video.